Hello, good evening, and welcome to the day 4, the final day of the incredible experience that is Triumph 2.0, India's largest diversity and inclusion event. These past few days have been absolutely eye opening for all of us, and I have had the chance to connect with some amazing people from different areas of the corporate world. Over the course of the last 3 days, we have seen discussions dealing with themes covering resilient leadership, how organizations approach diversity, and unlocking women power. Today's themes will specifically deal with the importance of inclusion and representation of PWD and the LGBTQ plus community in the workplace. Marginalization based on preconceived notions about the ability of what someone is able to accomplish only holds the true potential of a community back. It is crucial for societies to make real progress, and members of these communities are given the opportunity they deserve. We are happy to say that we have two engaging and informative panels for today, through which we hope we could raise awareness about the importance of inclusion and these communities in the workplace, and how it could also serve the benefit society at large. For today's session, we have a panel discussion on the importance of the inclusion of the LGBTQIA plus community in the workplace. The 21st century is not a place for exclusion on the basis of gender identities or sexual orientation. However, lack of awareness, stereotyping, and prejudice still plays a role in preventing members of this community from achieving their professional and personal goals. For this session, we are grateful to Mr. Akshay Tyagi and Dr. Ishani Roy for joining us on this panel, touching upon topics ranging from how organization can be more inclusive and accepting to what steps need to be taken in the future, shattering the stigma and myths along associated with hiring members of this community. Moderating today's session is Mr. Rajesh TL, the manager for marketing assisted search at monster.com. Rajesh has received degrees from Indira Gandhi National Open University and Symbiosis Center for Distance Learning, not to mention two certifications from Google in digital marketing and analytics. With over a total of 15 years at Monster India, he's nothing short of a veteran in the organization. We thank him for moderating this session and hand the stage over to him to introduce our panelists and begin the session.
Hello everyone, welcome to another day of India's largest diversity and inclusion event, Triumph 2.0, an initiative by Monster.com, one of the top job portals in India. I am Rajesh, part of a sister search business of Monster.com, and I am going to be your host for this session. In today's session, we discuss on stigma and myths related to LGBTQ community. We have in our panel Mr. Akshay Tyagi from Keshav Suri Foundation, whose mission is to embrace, empower, and mainstream the LGBTQIA plus community. Being a diversity and inclusion expert, Akshay Tyagi has been actively working with NGOs and as an advocate for the marginalized communities. Research paper investigating the impact of exclusion and discrimination of health and rights of transgender persons in Delhi received a funding from UNAIDS, where he is also the Youth Task Force member for Sustainable Development Goals 2030. Featuring as a panelist at the Future of Diversity being LGBTQ plus in the New Normal event, he has been a keynote speaker at various forums such as Queer Hour Literature Foundation Festival, Austrian Embassy's session on art and gender, American Embassy's discussion on allyship. Having presented his ideas and way forward to Niti Aayog on SDGs and LGBTQ plus community at UN House Delhi, Akshay is also working on the creation of a roadmap for safe and inclusive college campuses. Welcome, Akshay, for this session.
Namaskar, everyone.
We also have with us Dr. Ishani Roy, founder of Serein. In the past 6.5 years, Serein has worked with startups, VC firms, factories, non-government organizations, and multinational corporations on workplace diversity, safety, and inclusion. A scientist by training, Ishani has a PhD in applied mathematics from Brown University. Her dissertation was on developing mathematical models to solve astrophysics problems. Ishani has been a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Oxford and King's College London, where she worked on biomathematics. Most recently, she was a research scientist with General Electric, where she has contributed to product development in aerospace, healthcare, and energy sectors. During the course of her work, she became interested in how some companies were successful in growing an innovative, diverse culture, whilst many others struggled. Serein is an attempt in using science to enable diversity and inclusion and drive organization development in every business in India. Warm welcome to you, Dr. Ishani.
Thank you so much. Very nice to be on this panel.
So thank you both. It's a privilege to be you guys to be part of Monster Triumph Initiative, and we're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me. A little bit about me and the background of the company as well, and the work that we do. Like you said, that I was a scientist in my past life. As you know, the gender ratio for any scientist, mathematician, physicist is very, very skewed all over the world, not just in India. And when I moved back to India and started working in research, I realized that numbers are even lower. So, for example, a ratio would be 100 male scientists to 5 female scientists. It is as low as that. And that made me think, what is happening here? Is it because we are not, it's not because we are not studying science. It's definitely that we are studying, but then there is something happening where women are not staying in technical fields, or several reasons due to the, say, for example, societal pressure or certain biases in the organization or lack of policies, they're choosing to drop out. So that was the beginning of Serein. Along the way, realized that the problems that are faced are not just for women, it's very much for any minority group. So today we are going to talk about LGBTQ inclusion and the challenges of the community in the workplace, but it is faced by anybody, anyone speaking different languages, coming from a different background, for example, cultural differences. Religion is something we should definitely start talking about in the workplace as well. How we speak English, how we speak the language, all of these make so much difference, making somebody feel excluded in the workplace. So that's what we are trying to solve, that inclusion, and how do you make somebody feel belonged in the organization. Love to hear from Akshay.
I think you very rightly put that forth, that it is very much important for all of us to understand that not everybody starts from the same point. And in our journey, we all do come from different backgrounds, which is very important for us to recognize, because in most often how we actually experience and what we also expect and assuming is that everybody, if is applying for a job or for coming for a place where everybody is coming together, they all have the same level of understanding and same level of background, which is something which is to be actually explained. And we need to ensure that our biases, especially which are so strong when it comes to our beliefs, which have been stereotypically there, especially with respect to caste, religion, gender, sexual orientations, which have been taught to us in a certain way, are something that we need to really work upon, because there are a number of people out there who have been stereotypically outcasted and have been there have been a number of atrocities that people had to go through in their lives. Especially at the Lalisuri Hospitality Group, we actively have, whereas started this journey a decade back of involving communities, and we have had our own journey of being most inclusive space where we understand people who come from different walks of life. We understand people at their level about their experiences. It becomes even more important for us to narrow it down to the teams, because especially it's not just about HR, it's also about the very first security person standing at the gate of your organization, who is actually giving that first impression to any person visiting you. So that has to be sensitive enough, that person has to be inclusive enough. The kind of look, the kind of narrative they set for you is also very much important. And we have been just fortunate enough that for us, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not something that we are here doing to just tick the box. It is something which is very actively and passionately being driven by the top management of the organization, because it is not something which they just feel for. It is something which they very strongly have been advocating for as well. We have three executive directors, and two of them are women, and one is an out and proud gay man. And Mr. Keshav Suri has been spearheading this entire sphere of diversity, equity, and inclusion, wherein whilst we have had our own journey of of being accepted, because we had seen so many of our team members who, through number of training sessions, number of sensitization programs, number of initiatives that the organization has taken, has evolved and had shared with us their own journey of coming out as well. Like there have been almost 15 to 16 team members who, with are actively running this campaign, came out to us at the organization. There are over 70 people who are working with us and are part of the sphere, part of the spectrum of the LGBTQIA community, and are closeted but are very happily working with us. And we are very much happy of them just having that confidence in themselves, and we certainly don't want them to come out to actually prove to anybody, because it's a process, it takes time. So when I'm talking about inclusion, it should not be just exclusively inclusion of communities which you want to be seen and being visible because you have a certain number or target to match to, but certainly something where everybody feels safe, welcomed, recognized, and respected for who they are. And this is the kind of narrative that we have been trying to set up. It is also very much important that we need to understand that when it comes to the marginalized sections, it is not just about specific communities. There are various intersections in between. There are people with disabilities and can be queer. There are Muslim minorities. There are other religious minorities or caste minorities who have been outcasted, and then are intersections with maybe gender, with maybe caste, and all of it, and with people with disabilities. So we need to understand that by just secluding one person, you are just not secluding that as an individual. You are actually refraining so many others to be a part of that mainstream. So there comes your sensitization. There comes your responsibility to also communicate it impactfully to rest of the team members on why and what role is expected from them to be played in this entire journey or the movement of getting people not just an equal platform, but an equitable platform where they feel represented, where they feel recognized, where they feel welcomed, and where they feel that, okay, this is the space which they have been dreaming for their own selves, to be their authentic selves. Because that very fear of you not being you is something which has actually been costing us a lot amount when it comes to even our pink economy factor, and that is what World Bank report also stated in the year 2018. So this is why it is important. Like, it is not just a social issue, it is socio-economic, political, economical, all sort of issues are attached and interlinked, and this is why we need to put an extra focus on it.
Thank you, Akshay. Just to, it's rightly said that the inclusion should be not a topic, but it should be right to the bottom of the employee hierarchy till the security guard. It's a very valid point you said. But just to add to it, these days, most of the corporates or companies are opening the doors for LGBTQ. They are saying that, yes, our facilities or the policies that we have designed in our organization or will help the LGBTQ community job seekers to work proudly, and they can secure themselves to feel inclusive in the workspace. But do you think what the things that are being done at the organization level is enough for the community people to feel safe and or maybe come out and say that we belong to this community and we are happy to take up the opportunities that the companies are offering?
Okay, so see, I personally feel that whilst all of the policies reframing the entire structure of getting people included is all fine, it is also very much important to understand that this is actually a damage which has been here since years now. And we have lost our trust in the people over these years. It's not that easy to bring in people from the minority sections who have been outcasted and being neglected for years that easy, because you need to bring and you need to build their trust in you. You need to ensure it is not just about policy. You have to prove that there are people who understands them, who actually want to be working with them. And it is not about acceptance, because nobody is looking for you to accept them. People are wanting you to give them the same respect which you expect for yourself. So whilst having policies and entire structure in place is good, there is a lot of focus which is required on community engagement. It can never be you are working for so many people. It is always how you're working with the people to actually develop them, because eventually people have to come at work. The objective is to get not just have the policies, but the policies which and the people to avail these policies. So if I am saying that I have lakhs of in insurance which is worth lakhs, but I don't have even a single person, then my policies are meaningless, because I need to ensure that I actually make these policies for people who feel that okay, they're represented, they're valued. And for that, there has to be an immense focus on community building. There has to be an immense focus on engagement with the communities. There has to be an immense focus on upskilling and also enabling the people who have been out of their houses, out of their places, who have been at risk in their lives because of XYZ reasons, because oftentimes their parents don't accept. Oftentimes we at workplaces only, even if somebody is good enough and has required skill set to do a job, but have created the set of narratives where they felt uncomfortable, where they felt that they are not included. So it is time for us to bridge all of those gaps and the kind of distinctions that we have made over these years. So that will take time. And I think whilst changing policies, etc., is all good, and it is very much important, because that's a reflection of how actively and affirmatively you are wanting to work on the subject. It is also important to ensure that you also become part of activities wherein you build and earn trust of people, to actually set an ecosystem where everybody feels that okay, they are not just recognized but are represented and are also valued enough.
Okay. Ishani, do you want to share your sense on this? Because I feel that yes, there's still bias in terms of how companies are looking at not only the LGBTQ plus community, but also towards PWD, and maybe also as women who are coming out from maybe a sabbatical break. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Surely, I'm very happy to explain the challenges that we see in our work. I really like the way Akshay actually explained it so beautifully, going from policy and building on that policy, how to make sure a person is included and valued. That was so beautifully explained. I would just like to point out what we see in our research and our work, where the challenges lie. Because as you can see, my background is in science, so I'll share a few data with you that we have been seeing as well. First and foremost, what we see the challenges for inclusion, like you said, for any minority group, whether it's from the LGBTQ community or women or anybody from a different background, for example, there is a lot of discrimination and fear of bullying, for example, right? Why do these things happen? One of the things is that the conversation has started in this space, and people like Akshay, the Keshav Suri Foundation, is doing a wonderful job of actually letting people know. But what we are finding is that in the everyday workplace, people are often unsure, right? What is to say, what not to say. So there is a very lack of awareness and understanding of what is a gender identity, what is sexual orientation, and how should I not ask a question, for example. So if a person who say today I'm a woman and I identify as female. And how do I show my gender identity? I keep my hair long, I wear makeup, I wear a bindi, for example, I take a nice long handbag and all of that, and I come to work because it conforms to the society's norm of what a woman should be acting like, speaking like. People are okay with that. But tomorrow, for example, a person from the community who identifies as a different gender, for example, and they dress in a certain way. as a society is not ready for that. They are like, okay, that was not the norm, so how am I reacting to that, right? And that is exactly what is happening in the workplace as well. And what is the impact of that? People are feeling like they don't belong. People are feeling like they're marginalized. So what Akshay keeps on saying, that the feeling of belongingness or trust, that is completely not there. And what does happen, right? Even if it's not explicit discrimination, there's a lot of microaggressions that show up. So what we see typically is the level of microaggression often impact a person from the community very, very highly, and they choose not to stay. They choose that, it's better for me to not stay in this organization when people are not aware. People are either, there are bullying, or there is some way they're making me feel like I'm an outsider, and choose to leave the organization. There are two other important things that we have been seeing in our work, is that lack of the discrimination, the overtly discrimination, what we call, say, for example, when confirmation biases play up in the recruitment, when affinity biases. So people are often recruiting people who are just like them, right? If a person is not like them, they're not willing to recruit or give the opportunity of the promotion to them. So unconscious biases often play up very highly in the recruitment stages, in the face-to-face interviews, for example, in salary negotiations, for example, who gets the promotion, who gets the high profile opportunity, who gets to travel, for example. All of these things, we see a lot of biases play out. Now what happens if you don't progress in the organization? You're most likely to drop off, right? Another thing that we see, the challenges, is the pay disparity. Like I was saying, that I'll give you some examples. One of the things we see, that almost anyone from the cisgender employee, for example, gets paid almost 32% more than a trans employee. Now, this is a huge number, and this is all over the world. So pay disparity, we talk about gender-based pay disparity quite a lot. We have metric to measure that. Companies have pledged gender-based, say, male-female gender-based parity, but there is a lot of disparity when it comes to these subtle differences and the subtle biases that play out towards the LGBTQ community as well. So here are a few challenges that in our work we have been seeing. So what we say is that we have to take a very sustained effort, right? Look at the organization's data, look at where the pay disparity happening, where is the bias exactly getting concentrated at? Is it happening in the recruitment stage? Is it happening in the promotion stages? And what can we change in the organization? Not just policies, but how can we eliminate those biases so that people have a chance of an equitable organization?
Actually, I'd like to hear from you. The last question towards you is, what is that you want to tell to the job seekers belonging to these communities? How is there any preparedness that they need to make, or how they have to build their career?
So I personally feel that if you're looking for something, then of course you need to prepare yourself, because there is a lot of competition in the market, and your orientation or your any sort of distinction on any grounds will not make you a fitting candidate. And I certainly don't want anybody to get fitted into any system. It is time now that people claim their spaces, and everybody has their own journey. Whilst with respect to organizations, we certainly need to be proactive in our approach to find the right talent. It is also a responsibility of the candidates to ensure that whilst their identities and the distinction that they bring in on the table is one of the parameters, but that's not the entire them, because eventually the whole idea of actually being inclusive of sexual orientations is to ensure that none of us have anything to do with somebody's sexual orientation. So this cannot be one of the parameters for you to secure a job at the workplace. So it is very much important for candidates to prepare themselves. I would also like to say and reiterate that oftentimes what happens is that when people who have been deprived of opportunities for so many years just reach out to every single job opportunity which they see out there, and job mapping which one has to do for their own selves is not there. So I think it is very much important, and I would again like to reiterate that at the Keshav Suri Foundation and at the Lalit, we both help candidates understand those of the areas wherein candidates can actually understand on their best of the interest. What area do they want to go, and we often support them as well. Like our skilling programs are there, wherein we get that exposure to the candidates if they are not having the right set of skill to perform a specific task at the moment. And it is very much important for candidates also to realize that it's a competition, and when it comes to for profit organizations, that every single hiring is a cost, right? And whilst we are saying that the pink economy is a factor for everybody to look after and to actually look into, it is also important for the LGBTQI plus candidates to understand that none of the organizations are actually there to compromise. While they will surely make some adjustments, while they will surely give you certain preferences, because of course this is how we actually bring diversity at the table, by making specific amendments to bring in people. But it should then be a claim to space as well. People should claim their spaces. It is because once you are in the system, none of these reservations, none of these differences which brings you or which makes you a diverse candidate to an organization will make any difference. Eventually you will have to work. So prepare yourself, give yourself time, understand the right set of narrative that you want to create for your own self. Invest, because time is very much important, and we need to understand how we utilize that and what all we need to achieve. I personally feel that setting up a target for yourself is also a good activity. It's maybe because whilst I certainly understand that we all come from different backgrounds, there are a lot of candidates who might not be even having the right set of knowledge to even prepare their CVs. But there are a number of organizations out there who are wanting to support. And if there is anybody out there who is listening to this conversation today, please feel free to reach out to us at Keshav Suri Foundation. We will support you with your CV building exercises. Even if somebody feels that they do not have the right set of skill to perform a task, we have 12 hotels across the country, and I on this platform takes immense pleasure to we take, like, it's like a pledge that I can take right away, that I will assure you get a training opportunity at any of our hotels. And you, hospitality is a mini world. You will see departments from accounts to finance to marketing to HR to everything. So our doors are all open, and we will be happy to support you with training opportunities where you get an exposure to work, to learn, and to also enhance your skill to find a decent livelihood opportunity for your own self. And not just that, I'm sure most of you know that we also have India Workplace Equality Index, where we are actually, it's a benchmarking tool for organizations to assess their diversity inclusion ratio and the parameter which every organization is setting up for themselves. So that's also an exercise which is there to not just assess themselves, but also take another pledge to ensure that whilst all of this looks really good on paper or on reports, there is a lot more which is required to be done. And there are these trainees who are very much ready to get inducted into organizations now. And this is the pool that they need to tap on. And this is what is expected. So I think that would be the way where we will be able to bridge these gaps. It's important for us to come together to discuss our narratives, to discuss the issues. And there are a number of amazing organizations. There are a number of bodies, number of community-based organizations wanting to involve, wanting to build that trust. And I think whilst we are certainly advocating and have been asking and pushing corporate organizations to take a stand to be inclusive and to have that sensitive approach towards including various communities, it is also a responsibility for the marginalized communities at various intersections to take a step forward and try to build those gaps by building in the trust, by become participative. I'm sure there might be extreme highs and lows, but to get included, you have to fight. You have to make people realize why this disparity is there and what are the reasons, because only conversations and communication can bridge those gaps. So we have to ensure that we not just fight, but also communicate effectively what is expected, how organizations can bridge those gaps. And again, for community-based organizations as well, because there are so many working on the various issues, that do not direct somebody to go do a particular thing. Let candidate decide what exactly is right for themselves. Give them the time, give them that space, and maybe then we will have a better idea on what the candidates are majorly interested in, what sort of roadmap we need to create. And I think it is very much important, again, from the corporate point of view, that we need to be flexible in the opportunity that we create for our people, because especially even if two people are graduate, there is a possibility that they don't have the same set of skill and at that same level of excellency, right? So it is very much important that we understand all of those differences, and instead of strengthening those, we neutralize those conversations and then take an initiative to bring in communities together.
Yeah, right point, actually. So, Ishani, so the last question towards you is, we have this set of audience or job seekers from the community. We believe, or I believe that for them crack an interview, the first thing they have to face is the social stigma. So how the job seekers, or it is, I guess the counseling sessions play a major role here, where they can for organizations like Keshav Suri Foundation can guide those people to how to face this social stigma. But there are a set of audience or people who might not be going to these organizations. There is a hard reality for them. So what's your take on this, and how the job seekers can cope up with these things?
This is a good question. I'll talk to you about my experience of what an organization can do, because job seekers, like you said, right? And there is the Keshav Suri Foundation and other places where upskilling is important, and that's where they actually find a ground for an equitable opportunity. But if they don't have that, then organizations have to understand the concept of equity and privilege, right? What we mean by here is that a person who comes in from a marginalized group, any kind of minority group, for example, we have to understand that certain life experiences that they have gone through, the recruiting manager has gone through a very, very different life experience, right? So here is the concept of privilege. Often we think that it's my hard work and it's my merit which has led me to where I am. But that is completely wrong. Our life experiences are very, very different, right? Say, for example, I have been to a good school. Maybe my neighbor's daughter has also gone to the same school, but I had access to certain tutors which probably she did not have access to. I had access to my parents, say, for example, friends who mentored me to get into college. Perhaps my neighbor's daughter did not have that access, right? I have access to my parents' friends who probably helped me get an internship, which my neighbor's daughter did not have. So often we keep thinking that we are in the same, we were born equal, and we all have the same, we worked really, really hard to get to where we are. Not true. It's a lack of, it's the privileges and the lack of privileges are what is deterring somebody to get that opportunity in the workplace. So one of the things the organizations can do is understand where the lack of equity is, and to train the managers to understand that that is something you cannot focus on. So it has to be a level playing field that you are talking about. And what Akshay mentioned is actually very, very important. It's important to understand that not everybody has had that experience, the work experience, for example. So what he is saying, that they have several hotels where people can actually get the step up to understand how the workplace work before they actually go ahead and apply to their dream job, for example. That part is extremely important. Secondly, what is important is to have what we call strategies, right? So say, for example, there are certain things that can be done in the recruitment process. What we call is standardization. What we say is, say, for example, use a test-based recruitment as opposed to face-to-face recruitment. Oftentimes, the biases, the confirmation biases, the affinity biases that play up in face-to-face recruitment is way higher, much higher. Instead, if you do a test based, like a sample test based recruitment, for example, what we are looking at is the fit of the person. Say, for example, the person has gone through all of these studies and gone through all of the courses. They're able to match, able to actually fulfill all of the criteria. They're much able to get hired for the much larger chance of getting hired for the role. So from my experience, what are the things that we are trying to do is put in all of these processes, right? From the JD, the job descriptions that is going out, from how you are actually, whether you're inclusive in your language or not, who are you attracting, from the say, for example, the recruitment drives that you're having, where are you having them? Are you going to the majority pool, or are you actually extending a little bit your resources and your time to go out and say that I'm going to open it up so that I get a lot more different candidates than I have already have, right? Are you extending that? When you're doing a phone interview, or you're doing a CV evaluation, for example, are you getting biased by certain things? When you are, like I said, in doing a face-to-face interview, are you getting biased by certain things where your affinity biases are playing up in that? So this is what we talk about by saying that inclusion by design. So if you are to get a lot more minority candidates, one of the things that Akshay mentioned is upskilling is very important. And secondly, eliminating the biases which come from the privileges and the background for us is very important, and putting in all of these processes so that a manager, whatever their biases are, their mindset are, they have to sidestep it so that, the bias don't affect their recruitment. So these are the few things I think they can do.
Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Ishani. Thanks for your time and share. Thank you for sharing these your lovely thoughts with the audience. It's a privilege to have you in this session.
Thank you. I'll just close it by adding to what Dr. Ishani had mentioned, that it is time that we convert our privileges into opportunity. I think that's very important for us to do, because that is how we become inclusive in our approach. Also, to all the members of the community who are listening to this, it is important for them to realize that by not changing yourself, you're changing the world. So hang in here. Maybe these are, like, we have got better. We of course are now recognized and are accepted for who we are ever since section 377 has got away. But there is still a long fight. There is still a long fight to achieve the entire list of rights that are to be in place for everybody. But things will get better only if you believe in yourselves and you continue to be who you are. And for all the other members who may not identify with the LGBTQI spectrum, but are part of the larger umbrella, which is humanity, that we need to offer the same amount of love and respect to every other person out there, the same way we expect for our own selves. And I think that is very much important for all of us to understand, to create and bridge those gaps, and to also ensure that everybody is equally welcomed and accepted in any given system.
Thank you, Mr. Tyagi and Dr. Roy, for this informative discussion. Panels like this truly are vital in raising awareness about the LGBTQIA plus community and helping us understand how and why we must sensitize the workplace and make it more inclusive. I would also like to thank Mr. Rajesh for moderating this session.